to the bottom. If it wasn't for the fact that we got that rod inside, the bottom's actually in very good shape. These plank seams are very narrow. It doesn't look like anybody has ever caulked these plank seams. So let's just pretend for a moment that you don't have any rot in the boat, and I would not be afraid to take this guy down to the lake and start the soak-up process and not do anything with the plank seams. That's how good a shape they're in. They're pretty amazing. Now, if you got wide plank seams, then we have a product called Slick Seam. It's a heavy wax that we would put into those plank seams, and it's paintable. It doesn't actually ever cure, and it doesn't harden. So when the planks expand, it'll squeeze out these little strips of wax, almost like little curtains, or one of my customers called them hemorrhoids. And so they'll be like little curtains hanging down here, and the water will eventually slough those off. But what they do is protect your boat and keep the leakage down while the soak-up process is happening. Because even though these weren't intended to be the waterproof layer was your canvas. After the canvas deteriorated, whether they were intended to be a waterproof layer or not, it doesn't matter, because these planks became the waterproof layer.
Now, if I read correctly, these boats were never intended to last more than about 6 to 8 years.
That's right. They wanted to be trouble-free for the original customer for 6 to 8 years. And that's what they were designed to, quote-unquote, last. I mean, they would last longer, but then people were going to have to do maintenance to them. And they would be trouble-free, actually trouble-free for about 4 years. And depending on the customer's definition of trouble-free, you might go 6 or 8, depending on how much hassle they were willing to deal with.
Okay, now how are these planks held on?
They're held on with fasteners. You're going to have 1 3/4 inch at the fasteners at the frames. You're going to have on the intermediate ribs, those are going to be 3/4 inch fasteners or 1 inch fasteners.
Are these all covered with bungs?
And no, these were filled with a filler called Fanglewood.
Okay.
So now they make a 2-part. Rather than using that single part and waiting for it to cure, now we use a 2-part marine filler, and it works like Bondo.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's the same as Bondo, except that the filler doesn't take on water. So anyway, so we use that because it's much quicker to use.
Okay, so how do I find these screws? If I'm going to pull these planks off.
All these little bungs, or you can see all these little places.
Okay, so they do form a little bump.
Yeah,
and just peel that off with an ice pick or something?
Yeah, poke it out with an ice pick. And you don't have to be so pretty on the bottom.
Okay.
And then and this stuff will be shoved up in the head of the fastener as well, so they're going to give you trouble. Oh, by the way, these fasteners are not Phillips. They look like Phillips, and if anybody that doesn't realize these are different, they have already had trouble with stripping them out, especially if they're using a machine to screw in. They're called Reed and Prince, and the other name for them is Frearson, F-R-E-A-R-S-O-N. They are a little bit different shape, and it takes a little bit different shape screwdriver, and we have those bits as well.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, those are available. They're cheap. They're not expensive.
All of the screws are that way, or just the bottom screws?
All of them.
All of them.
All of them in the whole boat.
Okay.
Yep. You can use a Phillips on them if you're real careful, but
yeah. See, I got this one plank off the transom with a Phillips screwdriver, but I did strip some out.
Yeah, real aggravating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why. A lot of times after I poke this stuff out, I'll have 2 of those bits. I'll have one in my screwdriver, my power screwdriver, and I'll have another one, and it's a little bit longer. And once I've got everything that I can get stripped out of there, I pulverize what's left over by tapping with a hammer the back of that bit into the head. And I shape that head, and then I take my power driver and I go in. And I don't use an impact driver.
Okay.
And I don't use, I use a snap-on. It's a rather lame in terms of its power, which helps me keep from stripping the stuff out.
Okay. Now, so you think these planks are in pretty decent shape? Do you think I could pull these planks off and reuse them?
Yeah, I do.
Say I pulled the planks off, replaced the keel, replaced the plywood.
You're probably going to have to replace your garboard planks just because there was so much rot.
Okay, but I'll find that out once I pull them.
Yeah.
Now, these are just butt jointed together. There's no half flap joint or anything on these edges?
That's correct. Just butt jointed at the ends. Real simple.
Okay, butt joint on the ends and just butt it up against this one beside it.
Yes.
They're not beveled or anything.
No, no bevel or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, very simple.
Okay, what about the, since we're under here, let's take a look at the prop and the strut. Anything
well, your prop's
there?
got a little nick in it. It's probably worth spending the $100 to have it taken care of. I would rattle your shaft, and there's a strut bearing in here. It's actually made out of rubber.